The cafe was nearly empty when I pushed open the door. Just the low hum of the espresso machine, a soft jazz track, and rain tapping on the window. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every small thing you do. How long you stand in line, how you hold your phone, how you keep pretending you're busy. I ordered a black coffee. The barista asked for my name, and for a second I almost said hers. My sister's. Because everything that morning was about her wedding. I had ironed the shirt, packed the gift, checked the directions twice. I'd even drafted a toast I'd never give. And then she'd texted, "Hey, seating changed last minute. You're at table 9. Might be alone for a bit." It shouldn't have mattered. But it did. The woman behind me spoke quietly, her voice like something steady. "Black coffee, 2 sugars." I turned just enough to see her, maybe mid-40s, rain in her hair, an umbrella folded neatly at her side. She didn't look like someone in a hurry. There was something unhurried about her, like she'd learned to move around the world without expecting it to move for her. When the barista called out our names, we reached for our cups at the same time. She smiled just barely. "Sorry," I said. "Don't be," she replied. "We'll both need caffeine more than manners today." It wasn't flirtatious. Just like she'd noticed something tired in me. I found a corner table. She sat across the room by the window, a few seats away from mine. We didn't talk again, but I kept catching myself glancing up. When she stirred her coffee, when she tucked her hair behind her ear, once our eyes met, she smiled, polite but knowing. I looked away first. I texted my sister, "You sure you don't need help with setup?" No reply. So I scrolled aimlessly, opened the Notes app, and typed toast idea. Something about how love surprises you when you're not looking. Then I deleted it. When I looked up again, she was gone. Just an empty mug and a folded napkin, shaped almost perfectly into a square. At the wedding later that afternoon, the hall was all gold chairs and white flowers and people who knew how to belong. I didn't. I found table 9 near the back, the one next to the photo booth and the exit sign. Halfway through dinner, a woman brushed past the tables and stopped beside me. The same woman from the cafe. Her hair was dry now, her lipstick faint but deliberate. "You're here alone?" she asked softly. I laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be, but..." She didn't wait for me to finish. "Act like you're with me," she whispered. And then she sat down. Just like that. For a few seconds, the noise of the room felt far away. She smiled toward the crowd like she belonged there, her hand resting just near mine on the tablecloth. Not touching, but close enough to feel the heat of her skin. Someone across the room waved at her. She waved back easily, as if this had all been planned. I whispered, "What are you doing?" "Saving you," she said, still smiling. Then she leaned closer and added, almost like a secret, "You looked like you needed it." Later, when she stood to leave, she slipped a folded napkin beside my glass, like the one from the cafe. I didn't open it until after she was gone. Inside, in small handwriting, "Next time, sit somewhere you can be found." I stared at the words until the room blurred, the music, the laughter, all of it. And for the first time that day, I didn't feel entirely alone. I saw her again 2 weeks later. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. The same cafe, same corner table by the window. She was reading something this time, glasses balanced low on her nose, a mug cooling untouched beside her. I thought about walking past. Pretend I didn't notice. But she looked up before I could decide, and that faint, amused smile appeared, like she'd been expecting me. "You found somewhere to sit," she said. "Figured I'd take your advice." I answered, trying to sound casual. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Then sit." We didn't talk about the wedding. Maybe that was deliberate. Like both of us understood that night belonged somewhere separate, suspended between real and unreal. Instead, we talked about small things. The rain again. How the cafe playlist hadn't changed in months. She told me she used to come here every Thursday after teaching high school English. She said she quit 2 years ago after the divorce, moved into the duplex her mother left her, rented the upstairs flat to some grad student who still hadn't fixed his leaky sink. I almost choked on my coffee. "That's me." She blinked. "You're upstairs." I nodded, half embarrassed, half stunned. "Well," she said after a moment, smiling into her cup, "that explains the mysterious footsteps at odd hours." That small revelation changed something, not in a cinematic way, just in how the air felt between us. We started noticing each other in daily fragments, her collecting mail at the gate, me carrying groceries up the stairs, her knocking to ask if the heater worked. Once, she handed me a cup of tea when I was fixing the shelf by her kitchen window. "Don't spill," she said. "You don't trust me." She hesitated, eyes tracing the chipped edge of her mug. "I try not to." I didn't know what she meant, but I didn't ask. At night, I'd hear her moving downstairs, the clink of dishes, the faint hum of a late show. I caught myself imagining things that shouldn't be imagined, what she looked like in the quiet, what her voice sounded like when she wasn't being careful. And then, just as quickly, I'd feel the guilt. She was twice my age, my landlady, recently divorced, probably still healing from something I couldn't name. But the thought of her lingered, quiet but steady, like the sound of her kettle boiling through the floorboards. One evening, I came home drenched from the rain. The porch light was on, and she was standing there holding an umbrella. "You left this upstairs last week," she said. "Guess I forgot. Seems you do that often." Her tone was teasing, but when I reached for the umbrella, her fingers brushed mine, light, unintentional, but enough to stop everything for half a second. Neither of us moved. Then she let go first, smiling faintly. "Good night, upstairs," I nodded, trying to return it. But when I reached my door, I caught my reflection in the glass, and realized I was still holding her umbrella. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I started hearing her less. The kettle, the faint music, even her footsteps, all quieter now. At first, I thought maybe I was just imagining it. But the silence grew steady, deliberate, like she'd decided to exist at a different volume. Then one morning, a note appeared on my door, "Sink's leaking again. If you have time." No please. No smiley face. Just the kind of message someone writes when they're trying not to write more. When I knocked on her door later, she opened it half an inch, as if expecting someone else. "Oh," she said, her tone softening. Sorry, got your note." She hesitated, then let me in. The kitchen looked the same, but the air didn't. The window was fog, kettle steaming quietly. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. A name flashing I didn't recognize. Before she turned it face down, she leaned against the counter while I fixed the pipe beneath the sink. The water dripped slow, rhythmic. Every few seconds I'd catch her glancing down. Not at me, exactly, just toward me. "You've been busy?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Trying to be," then quieter. "It's better that way." When I finished, I washed my hands at the tap. She handed me a towel. A plain white one, soft and worn. I dried my hands too slowly, just to stay in the moment a little longer. "You don't have to fix everything, you know," she said suddenly. "I like fixing things," I answered without looking at her. She sighed. "You remind me of someone who thought that once." I turned, but she didn't elaborate. Just stared out the window, arms folded, as if she'd already said too much. For a while, we stood there in the quiet, me pretending to check the seal under the sink, her pretending not to watch. Then the front door creaked open. A voice, male, older, called from the hall. "Still here?" She stiffened. "My brother," she mouthed, then louder, "in the kitchen." I straightened, wiped my hands on my jeans, and tried to look casual. He stepped in, nodded at me. "Tenant?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Just helping with the sink." He looked between us. A pause, long enough to feel heavier than words. Then shrugged. "Mom's photo frames still in the attic. In the box marked spring." He left without another glance. But the silence that followed was different. Tighter, she finally exhaled. "He worries," she murmured. "I know you. About everything." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I suppose that includes this. You being here." Too, it was. The small, quiet wall between us. I wanted to say something. "I'm not here for anything, I just like talking to you." But none of it would have been true. Instead, I said, "I'll stay out of the way." She stepped closer, almost like she hadn't meant to. Her hand lifted, maybe to touch my arm, maybe just to steady herself, but stopped halfway. "I didn't mean." She started, then stopped, eyes searching mine. We were close enough to feel the warmth between us. Close enough for it to mean something. Her breath caught. Mine did too. And then she stepped back. "Thank you for fixing the sink," she said, voice too even. I nodded, though the words felt smaller than the silence between them. That night, I heard the kettle again. Just once. And I couldn't tell if it was real, or if I'd just been listening for her. It was late afternoon when she asked if I could help carry an old box to the curb. The sky looked washed out. That gray that comes before rain but never follows through. "Nothing heavy," she said, though the box clearly was. She wore a cardigan over a faded t-shirt, hair tied back loosely, like she hadn't meant to look nice but somehow did anyway. We walked together down the narrow path between the houses, the box between us. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and lemon detergent. "You could have called someone else," I said. "I didn't want to," she replied. At the curb we set the box down. She brushed her hands on her jeans, watching the street, not me. "I found an old photo inside," she said quietly. "From when I was 23. Thought I looked so grown then." A soft laugh. I was still a child. I didn't say anything, just watched her, the way the light caught the small lines near her eyes. Proof of the years she was suddenly remembering. After a moment, she looked up. "Do you ever feel like you missed something? Not because it's gone. Just because you didn't know it was happening while it was." I swallowed. "Every day." Her eyes lingered on mine, searching for something I wasn't sure I wanted her to find. We sat on the low stone wall by the curb. The box leaned against her knee, half open, old photographs spilling slightly at the corner. She picked one up. Her and some man at a beach. He was holding her waist, both smiling, sun in their eyes. "My ex," she said simply. "He used to say I was hard to read." Then, almost to herself, "Maybe I still am." I hesitated. "You're not." She turned, startled a little. "You just..." I paused. "You hold things too carefully. Like they'll break if you touch them." The air shifted. That barely. Their current between honesty and something you can't take back. She stared at me for a long moment. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'll start believing you mean them." Something passed through her eyes then, not anger, not even fear, just exhaustion. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You're 24. She murmured, "Somewhere else. Not here, talking to your landlady about old photographs." "I like being here," I said quietly. She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "You don't know what you like yet." Her voice softened. "And I'm not supposed to like that you do." The silence stretched. A car passed, the wind stirred the papers in the box, and one photo fluttered onto my shoe. I reached to pick it up, so did she. Our hands met halfway. This time neither of us pulled away. Her thumb brushed against mine, the world went still. Then she whispered, almost like a question, "What are we doing?" Neither of us answered. But neither of us moved. For 3 days. She didn't answer the door. Her curtains stayed drawn, the porch light off. The quiet below my floorboards was louder than any argument could have been. I told myself she was busy, grading papers again, or away visiting family. But every creak in the old house felt like her absence pressing against the walls. On the 4th evening, I saw her car in the driveway. A new dent near the fender, a child's backpack on the back seat. I found out later from the neighbor that her daughter had come home. I didn't know she had one. "She's in college," the neighbor said, pulling weeds along the fence. "Must have dropped out early this semester. Poor thing's been through a lot since the divorce." I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. That small, invisible betrayal of never having known something so basic. The next morning I heard footsteps downstairs again. 2 sets. Laughter, younger, lighter, a voice calling, and then hers, warm and alive in a way I hadn't heard in weeks. That night I almost texted her. "Hope your daughter's settling in." I typed it. Deleted it again. Instead I went for a walk. Past the park. The old bench where we'd sat with the photographs. The air had turned cold, the kind that gets into your sleeves. I kept thinking about that moment by the curb. Her hand over mine, her question hanging there. What are we doing? Maybe this was the answer. Maybe nothing. On Sunday a knock came on my door. When I opened it, she stood there holding a small bag of groceries. "Ran into you at the market," she said softly, as if rehearsing it. "Thought I'd save you a trip." Thanks. She stepped back quickly, hands shoved into her pockets. My daughter's staying a while. Just until she figures things out. I nodded. That's good. I might not be around much, she added. New routine, you know how it is. Her voice was kind, but her eyes never met mine. For a second, I wanted to say something. That I missed hearing her kettle, that I noticed when she wasn't home. That I didn't know what to do with the quiet she left behind. But I didn't. She waited, maybe hoping I would. Then she gave a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. Take care, upstairs. That night, I sat by my window. The porch light below flicked on for a moment, then off again. I drafted a message. I didn't mean to make things complicated. I just liked talking to you. The cursor blinked. The screen glowed pale against my hand. And then I locked my phone and set it face down. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a meaningful day. Just one of those evenings when the air feels tired, and everything in the house hums slightly out of tune. I'd left a letter by her door that morning, not a confession, not really. Just a note about the rent, folded around a line I didn't mean to include. Hope you're doing okay. She hadn't replied. But that night I heard footsteps on the stairs. When I opened the door, she was standing there. No coat, no shoes, hair damp from the rain. You left this, she said, holding up the note. Yeah, I said, awkwardly. Sorry if. Why did you write it? Her tone wasn't angry, just tired. Like she'd been holding the question all day, and it had finally gotten too heavy. We stood in the doorway for a long moment, rain whispering against the window. I guess, I said slowly, I just wanted to make sure you were still here. She exhaled, a small, broken sound, half sigh, half laugh. I'm here, she said. Too much sometimes, not enoughly. Her eyes flickered up. That quiet look again, the one that made everything else blur. She stepped inside before I could move. Looked around my small kitchen. The mismatched mugs. The kettle I'd borrowed from her months ago and never returned. You never brought it back, she said, faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. I was waiting for an excuse. Her hands found the counter behind her. You shouldn't say things like that. Because you'll believe me. Because I already do. The silence thickened, not awkward, just full. She looked older tonight. Somehow, not in years but in weight. I could see all the things she hadn't said sitting right there between us. I can't do this, she whispered. You're kind, and good, and not mine to have. I didn't ask to be, I said. No, she said softly. That's what makes it worse. Her voice wavered, and for a moment, I thought she might leave, but instead, she stayed. I don't know what you want from me, she said. I took a breath. Just to know if you ever think about that night. The wedding, the napkin, any of it. Her eyes softened. Every day. She moved closer then, until we were standing almost chest to chest. The smell of rain and coffee between us. I wish it were different, she said. So do I. Neither of us moved to close the space. But something in the air finally eased, like two threads pulling in opposite directions and finally, quietly letting go. She reached up, touched my sleeve. Just a brush of fingers, nothing more, and whispered, okay. I nodded. Okay. She left a few minutes later, her steps quiet on the stairs. I poured water into the kettle she'd once lent me, waited for it to boil. It never did. It's been a year since the wedding. The world didn't change much. Only in the ways that matter when no one's watching. The cafe still plays the same soft jazz, though the chairs have been replaced. The old duplex still creaks when it rains, but now the silence inside it feels different, less like waiting, more like living. She still lives downstairs, I still live upstairs. Somehow that's enough. We never had the kind of ending people expect. No tearful confessions, no late night knock at the door. Just small ordinary choices that grew into something steady. She started teaching again part-time. I finished my thesis finally. Sometimes, when I'm working late, she'll tap on my ceiling with a broom handle. Twice. Which means, tea. By the time I come down, the kettle's already steaming. We don't talk much about that night in my kitchen. Or the one at the wedding. Or the box of old photographs we left out by the curb. But they live between us, like soft undercurrents we've both learned not to disturb. One morning in early spring, she asked if I wanted to walk with her to the park. We sat on the same bench where we'd once dropped those photos. The trees were starting to bud, the air still cold enough to see our breath. She handed me a cup of black coffee, no sugar. I remembered, she said. I smiled. You always do. We watched the street for a while, quiet and content. Then she said, almost to herself, you were 24 when I met you. Yeah. You've changed. So have you. She laughed softly. I've gotten older. I didn't say that. Her hand found mine on the bench, not deliberate, not shy, just there. Real. We stayed like that until the church bells rang across the street, 8:47 a.m., a time we both seemed to notice but didn't comment on. Maybe that's what this was. Not a love story in the usual sense, but something slower, quieter. A companionship built out of pauses and small routines. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken to be understood. That night, I came home to find a folded napkin on my doorstep. Inside, in her familiar handwriting, still sitting where I can find you. I smiled, standing there under the porch light, rain starting again, faint and familiar. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wonder what we were, I just knew.